Welcome to Convention Not Podcast. This is the first episode of the second season. And if you're a Convention Not listener, you already know that what we're focusing on for season number 2 is going to include interviews in a way that we haven't put onto the show too often before. And we're proud to announce that our first guest is Gabe Buckner. And Gabe is a guy that Ryan, have worked with probably for the greater part of a decade now, Gabe, I believe.
Yep.
And one of the things that I've come to know about Gabe, and one of the reasons that we were excited to welcome him onto the show, is that he is an ever entrepreneur. And of course, both Mike and I are entrepreneurs, and it's something that probably strings well with both of us. One of the things that's particularly cool to me about Gabe's story is that he has amassed a significant amount of success through a few different industries. Gabe, I'm going to let you tell your own story, but started a little bit in construction and moved and learned how to sell and moved into software. And you also dabble on a couple of really cool side projects that I hope we get to talk about today that are a little bit more focused on your creative side. And I know that all of those things aren't focused on just earning revenue. I've come to understand that you've been able to do that. You've been pretty successful in your career. But we really want to kind of talk about what most of our listeners are curious to hear about is, aside from building businesses, what is it that you've done over the years? And today we'll talk about a lot of things, getting into the way that Gabe works, how we're able to kind of translate the success that we build in an office or on the road into happiness in our life over the long run. How have I done? Is that reasonable to introduce you that way? Is there anything that I led our people to believe incorrectly?
Yeah, I think you did good. Yeah, I've just had a real fast-paced business career, and staying happy is one of the biggest challenges that I've had to deal with over the years, especially with all the traveling, which is very detrimental to home life, of course.
Yeah, I guess that's how we got to know each other mostly through the years, is that we probably spent you just left the industry, the home medical equipment industry, but 5 to 7 years in entirety seeing each other probably 5 to 10 times a year, teleconference or something like that. Mike, I know you're about to set out for a West Coast trip to California, doing some business travel. And I think it's kind of something that unifies you.
I was going to go back to just, Gabe's travel and, mentioning that seems like a kind of built-in part of his career, at least current. I mean, we're not teenagers. How long would you say that like travel has been just an absolutely required part of your job?
So since I was about 26, and I'm 35 now, almost 36 now. So
okay,
I got into it, and I started at a software company, and we just started doing trade show after trade show after trade show, and I did about 35 a year for the first 3 years or so.
I mean, at that point, it was almost like necessity, right? Not like ambition as much as like you had to get out there on the road and get your product out there, right?
Yeah, correct. I mean, I was always good at selling over the phone, but I think handshake and face-to-face carries a ton of value. And getting out there and saying, hey, I'm Gabe. And they're like, oh, you've been calling me. And I was like, yeah, that's me. That's me that's calling you. And they're like, yeah, I mean to call you back, or, we need to catch up. And I said, well, here's a perfect time. And as I saw that being successful, then I just started doing it more and more and more. And living on the road was kind of what I did for a few years to kind of build the business. And it wasn't just myself, it was the owner as well of the business at that time.
Okay. I'm going to assume the product was quality, but that you being the, kind of a tech guy and the face of the sale, like that's pretty powerful, right? I mean, I can't imagine many of your competitors had that kind of, we're wearing both of those hats, right?
Correct. Yeah. We're kind of the first on the scene. It was a new market. It was a new market product. So really no one else was doing it. And we were doing it a little bit different. And we just had to get the education out there of what we're actually doing, which took a lot of time and effort.
One of the things that I always admired about what you guys did with that product is that you became very personal. And I know you, even with some of the early marketing of that product, were kind of like the visual perspective, and watching you guys grow that business from afar. It was cool to watch. And you have a partner in crime, or had a partner in crime at that point in time, Jen Leon, who perhaps someday will be a guest of the show as well. You guys created such an amazing brand story by literally using Gabe's face in the beard. So for those of you who are listening today and not watching our video, you got to check out Gabe's beard. It's one of the most priceless pieces of work that he's done. However,
very impressive.
Ultimately, you guys used your image, and you showed up to talk to people and shake their hands after the postcard or the website or the image that you guys used to create those early on brands. I would think it was probably out of point of necessity, understanding how small you were at that point in time. But looking back, that was really part of the catalyst to blow it up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my face was on the business card with crazy, my eyes were facing different directions, and I'd hand people my card and they're like, oh, this is great. I'm never getting rid of this. And it just was all about being memorable, being in their face. It was real cutting edge kind of, I don't want to say.
That was audacious. That's you in your mid-20s? Can I Google that company?
Yeah, you could Google the company. The company, it was called Strategic AR.
Okay.
And it was a patient billing and collections company.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of where I started seeing heavy success, was at that organization.
And so I think that's an important milestone in your early career there, in your early career, I should say. That was some years ago, 5 years ago now. But that was definitely the first time you sold something big, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I've always been kind of wanting to make my own, in business and in life, of course, but I would say I'm more addicted to money than I am anything else. And it's
fair enough.
It's a huge money addiction for me. I can't get enough. And that really started it. Being in this organization really started, and it just was a whirlwind of opportunity that follows money.
So like, you obviously had a wealth of confidence in your mid-20s and were willing to maybe take some risks professionally. So you probably didn't get there overnight. And my understanding is you started doing your own thing in your teen years. I'd love to even go further back if you don't mind.
So I started working with my father when I was about 13 years old, and he owned a construction company building new residential homes. And there was always odd jobs to do. It was never ending. I mean, I remember whole weekends just moving a dirt pile with a shovel to the other side of the driveway. Stupid things to make me busy and teach me some work ethic, because I just had zero. Credit my dad for that. But I started doing that. And then new homeowners started requesting wood fences versus chain link fences because they were nicer neighborhoods.
They look nicer.
And they look nicer, and, they last. And it's just, it's a picket fence. Yeah, white picket fence. So we started building some fences, and then one thing led to another. My dad's like, you could handle this. You could run this all yourself. And I was going door to door, knocking on doors saying, hey, I'd like to build you a fence.
You're 15 by now or what?
Yeah, I'm about 15 now. Yeah. Walking door to door. I got some dog toys made up with my name on them, which was Buckner Fencing. And I left a dog toy if I noticed they had a dog that was chained up in the backyard, or I walked by and saw it before. And then it was a great marketing idea, because now they have dog toy for the dog, and everyone at the dog wants a fence. And it kind of just blew up. It just went.
Go back to the dog toy. Hold up. I want to hear more about the dog toy, dude. That's genius. You're a 15-year-old kid walking around after school in the summers, 30, 40 hours.
Yep. With a wagon. Oh, dude, with a wagon. I'd get out of school at 3:30, get my wagon, start dragging it all over, and just going door to door, handing out business cards and handing out dog toys if they had a dog, and just asking if I could build a fence and tell them it was my company. And the big thing was, no one trusts a 15-year-old kid to build a fence. So then I had to give them references, and my dad would come talk to them. And then, the first payment was always hard, because they're handing me half a fence cost, and half a fence cost about $1,500.
Okay.
And they're handing me cash mostly, because back then there was no mobile credit card processing.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to take a check because I'd been burned in the past by a bad check. And so I was always asking for cash. And it was an experience to go door to door and ask people for to building the fence, and it was even harder to get money. My dad would always have to come over. So I did that for multiple years. And then I started making so much money. I bought a brand new Camaro when I turned 17. I was doing whatever I wanted. And then I started getting behind in school, and I never was a great student. I mean, never. Always D's and F's. Horrible student. And I just didn't pay attention. I would rather, look at girls or talk to girls or talk to my friends.
Clearly, you were capable as hell. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine if you had tried that getting better grades would have been a huge challenge for.
Oh, yeah. I just didn't apply myself. And so I just kind of got skated through the school system. And then I found myself having a business that I was working, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, as much as I could to get everything done. And then I'd go to school, and then I found myself as a second year senior. And then the embarrassment hit of, wow, I'm a second year senior now. This isn't where I want to go. And I just dropped out. I just quit. And I was like, I'm good enough for what I do. I make great money. I'm living on my own. It's going wonderful. And then fast forward a few years, I was in a car accident and broke my back, and then everything changed.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So really had to just start over.
How old are you then?
I was 20 years old when that happened.
Okay. So you're still a kid, really.
Yeah. I was at a bar, too, drinking.
Okay. I want to hear about that story. Real quick, though, at 20, your fence company, like, you got a few trucks and you got dudes working for you, or are you still digging holes every day?
No, I got trucks going. I got guys digging holes for me. I got guys putting up pickets. I mean, we're moving and shaking. It's going great.
Like but all over Missouri, basically.
Well, just in Kansas. Yeah, just in Liberty, where I'm from, which is a huge economic growth area. We're doing 100-something fences a year. I mean, that's a lot.
Gotcha. All right. So, so you're 20, more money than you know what to do with.
Yep. Oh, nonstop.
You got a lot of friends, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. Going to the Lake of the Ozarks every weekend, renting a huge boat, partying, having fun, renting a lake house. It was awesome. It was fun. But I was still doing all the work, though. So I would show up on the jobs and I was putting in still that sweat equity, but I really didn't learn how to run a business until a lot later in life because I made so many mistakes.
No, I was just going to say, at least one of them was an event, right? Sounds like kind of made you change some things pretty immediately.
Yeah. So I was at a bar and I was inebriated. I need a ride home. I got a friend to drive my car home. And we ended up rolling the car a few times, and I flew out, broke my back, my neck, my jaw, some ribs, my hip. And I was in the hospital for, 120 days or so. And then I was in rehab for a year after that. After I got out of the hospital, literally laid in bed for months on end and go to rehab and then lay in bed. And that was it. And then I was really lost after that for, about a year probably. I was lost. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get out and work the business anymore. My dad had taken it over by that point. And then he turned it into a full-time business that is ran by another gentleman now. And once I got in the car business, I learned a lot about business and working with others and how to sell. And I didn't learn from books. I learned from mentors.
When I think about my background wasn't the same from an entrepreneurial perspective, but the result was the same, which is that I ended up selling cars to learn how to sell. I learned almost everything, not just in my sales career, though, to be honest, but everything that I've learned from mentors and good leaders. I think that's part of, and this, I know is part of what you do today, is that when I get a chance to lead people, I'm more excited than if I am in an organization where leadership isn't focused on maximizing opportunity or putting people in a position to have mentorship. How long do you sell cars for?
Oh, just a few years, maybe 2.5 years probably. And then an opportunity kind of fell into my lap. The internet was really, people were starting to buy cars on the internet. And I had a friend that had an idea to put put cars on the internet to help dealerships sell them. And I immediately went to work there with him. It went well for a couple years, and then we got acquired by a very large company. Then I found myself again with nothing to do for about a year. And then I had a friend that was doing some development work for Strategic AR, this company that I worked for about 10 years. And he was brought on to do development, and he was brought on to do sales as well. And what he found out was he couldn't do both. And so he told me, and I said, yeah, I'd be interested in talking to the owner. So I came in and talked with the owner, which it went great. And he's like, I'll call you. And I said, hey, I'll work commission only. And he's like, can you start tomorrow? And really, I just started dialing for dollars every single day, dialing for dollars. The gentleman's name was Kevin Winkley, which was a huge mentor in my life. One of the best people I know. I still keep in contact with him. He always had my best interests at heart, which was always great. A lot of people don't do that, but we built that thing nonstop. We're traveling. I was calling, set up demos. He was doing demos. And then I asked to have the reins of the business, and he kind of handed them over to me. I started doing all the demos, doing all the calls, and I hired some other sales guys. And then we started growing very quickly, and we grew fast enough. We got noticed by some huge organizations, and we got acquired by one of them. After I left, after 5 years after we got acquired, we still had a lot of the same employees we had when we got acquired. So it was a very good acquisition.
That's quite an accomplishment. I know for a lot of people who aren't familiar with acquisitions and how that goes, and there's a million stats about this, but I think the retention rate is usually about half, and it's about half after 2 years. So to have most of your staff still there, it says a lot about the way that you're able to not only hold your culture strong that you have, because after a marriage from a merge, at least in my experience, and I've been through a couple of these at this point in time too, one of which is the same company when Gabe and I crossed business cards for a year or two. But I think that's quite an accomplishment, and says a little bit more about like how you're able to keep happiness after success. Because a few people on that staff got checks, right? It's tempting to walk away. How did you guys do that after they left? How did you keep people happy?
Well, it first started with a lot of trust in the organization. Kevin kind of trusted me to do whatever I wanted, and that trickled down to the business. A lot of people came to me, or Jennifer Leon, a good friend of mine. We just trusted everyone to do their own thing. And if you needed to work from home that day, or you were sick, or you want to take vacation, it's great. Just get your stuff done at the end of the day. That's kind of the mindset we had. And literally 2 or 3 times a week, we're hitting a happy hour. So that was kind of the big thing is, we're hitting a happy hour just a couple hours each week. And it really created a culture of friendship versus kind of an employeeship. I don't know if that's a word or not, but we didn't treat anybody like employees. We treated them like friends because we really thought they were in there together with us. And this is even before the acquisition. And Kevin was always great at telling us how good we did and celebrating any small accomplishment we each made. And that's how we kept a great culture going. And that lasted a few years after he left as well. And then, one of the things that Jennifer and I really struggled with was keeping that culture alive of a small family owned business and operated versus a corporation owned business. The other big thing too is we had a really fun office atmosphere. We did luncheons all the time. We had potlucks. We had chili cook-offs. We gave out bonuses every single quarter. We had a good quarter. We're handing out bonuses. Kevin would walk around with stacks of $100 bills and give out bonuses to people that when we hit numbers. It was hard to keep it after we got acquired, but we did our best. It was a great opportunity for me to learn how to run an organization from a gentleman, Kevin, that ran multiple organizations and built other businesses before this one. And that was probably one of the best opportunities I've ever had in my business career here.
One of the things jumps out at me, in your discussion about culture, it went on for a little bit there. And that's the reality, I think, for this strong culture is it needs to be multifaceted, right? If Kevin's only walking around giving out hundreds, it's, when the hundreds dry up, so does the culture. You have the other things, you can still go to happy hour, and then maybe you can't do that as much. Well, you still know each other, and you can still show the care for one another's families and things like that. But to create it, it takes, man, it's a lot of seeds to plant. It really is. And like, it doesn't happen accidentally. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it happens subconsciously. You get a couple guys who want to work hard and they play hard, work hard. And then that culture and that success builds around that. That happens sometimes, but an intentional development of that culture, it's got to be really difficult, man. You have to be selective about the pieces, the people,
yep.
the space, a lot of things.
We're all reward and incentive driven. And the $100 bill is what comes along with the handshake. You know, I never had the pleasure of working for Kevin, but I did and do know him. I know he moved on to a company that he started called Bungee. The $100 bill or the bonus or the pieces there, those are the things, those are like the universal scoreboard that we all have. But the real thing is like the handshake. The real thing is the recognition in front of everybody else when you hold up the $100 bill. And whether you're motivated by competition and somebody across the table didn't get a $100 bill, or you're motivated by inclusion because everybody got a $100 bill, that's the feeling that I think I heard that was created pretty consistently through those companies that you started to talk about, or, you know, up to that point in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, Ryan, it's funny you say the $100 universal language. I mean, you've been how many clubs with me and we walk right in, we don't wait in any line. It's the $100 bill. That's all it is. It's not, I don't have clout. People don't know me. I just walk up and hand them 100 and I say, it's me and my friends. They're like, come on in, sir. It's the universal language. It's so true.
It is universal.
Yeah. When you give somebody a raise, you have to know what the impact is, right? You know, when you hand out like a $20 bill, that means one thing to one person and another thing to somebody else. Sometimes a $20 bill in a business environment is a little bit more impactful than a dollar raise. Believe it or not. And that sounds like really crazy. $1 an hour raise is something that when you talk about operational based businesses, that's a lot, or it seems like a lot, right? But when you translate that into today's society and taxes and so on and so forth, that doesn't make as big of an impact as insisting that somebody stands on their desk, hand them a card in a $20 bill and let them receive that benefit from their peers. It's way more valuable, infinitely more valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I learned that trick from a guy, Jim Knight, Ryan.
Okay. You would be a good guest on this show.
That's who I was going to recommend you guys have on the show sometime. He's one of the most interesting men I know.
I keep this running list, which is kind of like what I'm writing down here, which are all the people that I tag in the episode at convention._podcast is our Instagram. And that's really our major promotion thing. Mike and I don't do too much when it comes to promotion, but I'll make sure that he gets tagged in this and as well as a request.
I was at a show in North Carolina and these guys showed up late to the show the next morning, which was Jim Knight and John Stalnaker. They showed up late to the meeting. They missed breakfast. And so I talked to them. I said, what are you guys doing? I'm like, oh, went out last night. We had some fun. And I said, what'd you guys do? And they told me what they did. And I was like, well, I want to go. That night we went out and we went to this place called Loggerheads in North Carolina. And it's like a small college bar that you could flip a quarter to the
I've been to Loggerheads.
Yeah, Ryan's been there. Yeah, it's 105 degrees in there. There's 200 bodies. There's live music. And I started checking IDs at the door and only letting pretty girls in. And then these guys were like, all right, we're best friends now. And it just kind of went from there. And Jim taught me that deals are made at night. And I took that wholeheartedly. And I started taking all my clients to big, expensive dinners, buying big, expensive bottles of wine, taking paperwork with me to the dinner. And people were signing up that night. And my business skyrocketed doing it that way. Because people like to do business with people they like. And Ryan's seen that. I mean, you've been to a few dinners with me. It's an incredible experience. I mean, I turned in at $4,000 and it was an adventure to get that approved by Kevin.
My former sales reps would have received also major shade if they turned that into me. But I did that in Sleep Labs over the early, let's say like the early 2010s, if that makes sense, around like 2008, 2009. We would put folks overnight in Sleep Labs buying whatever we could possibly buy for sleep techs all night long. That was the era of 5-hour energy. So I might not have purchased as many Lagerhead drinks as you, but very similar, that we would just turn the tap on for as much pizza and as much Red Bull / Monster that any of these clinical places would want. And it would help us increase business. I would say like part of it isn't, it's easy to jump to when you start to think about alcohol. Part of it is like thinking that like inhibitions are lowered. But what I would say is the thing that happens at night, in my experience, is that you step out of the box a little bit. You have a little bit more personal interaction, and it becomes a little bit more understanding, especially when you're closing and people should know that these are hundreds of $1,000 deals, right, David? By that point in time in your career, a dinner for a bunch of people, that number is what it is. But the reality is that that's where things get done. Let's just revisit. So you build a fencing business, you move on, you work into the web promotion of vehicles, moving software. Then we move into the healthcare sec, ultimately acquired again. I know that you recently left, and I think that this is kind of like the part of where we're going to transition a little bit more into talking about like what it is that you do. We learn how you close deals and we learn all those types of things, but kind of talking about what you're doing now and how that's changing for you to ultimately be at home more and ultimately work on some of the things that I know you're working on, like Fat Trunk brands that are a big part of what you're doing, as well as your family, which one of the things that's always inspired me about you is that you're a young dad, man. And so through all this time, Carson has been the thing that you're most eager to show me about when we see each other. Right. We've been on some of those dinners, had some chef's tables with you, either at Nobu or other restaurants that probably make a lot of people kind of like roll their eyes when they hear it. But like the first thing that we fucking talked about, man, is your kid.
Yeah, sure. So I've always kind of followed just a connected path for me that kind of leads me down happiness. So this is something that interests me. I think it's going to make me happy. And this is what I want to do now. And started a company a few years ago, which was called Fat Trunk Wood. Fat Trunk Wood was just a hobby of mine. And I started building tables and cabinets and end tables and anything really you could build out of wood. And I turned a hobby into a business, and it's still going today.
Seen some of your pieces. It's incredible.
Thanks, man. Thank you. I made a table for a gentleman, and he owned a jeans factory downtown Kansas City, where they made men's and women's jeans and clothing. And I built him a table, and I just complained him on my size because, anyone on the line today, they can't see me, but I'm 6'3" and 390 pounds. Buying clothes isn't an easy thing for me to do. And I complained about my jeans, and this gentleman said, well, why don't we make some jeans for you? And he made me a pair of jeans, and I absolutely loved them. And using kind of the pattern that I wanted and the fit that I wanted. And so I have a men's jean company for plus size guys out there, 38 to 60. And you can find it Fat Trunk on Instagram or, Fat Trunk on the internet, something that I've been doing for about 2 years now. So that's going good. And then I took the jump of starting another business with a friend of mine called Project. And this friend of mine, I was his best man at his wedding. I met him in high school. His name's Nathan Riley. He's a great friend of mine. And what Project does is we do software development. So people come to us every week and they say, I have this idea for an app. I want it to do this. I want it to get in everyone's hands. Can you build it? And we say, yeah, we can build it. It takes this amount of money to build it. And we build custom software programs for some friends of mine in the industry. And it's going really well. And I've been doing that since January of this year. Grown around 330% in 5 months since I've been there. So it's going
so Project,
really well.
If you want to find them online, is PRODJEX.com. If I want to talk to projects or if I see something there on one of those Fat Trunk brands, how do I reach out to you?
Just hit me up on Instagram, or you can hit me at gabe@project.com. It's GABE at project, PRODJEX.com. And well, Ryan, I'm the guy that everyone comes to and says, hey, I have this problem. How can you help me? And I have a solution for it because I literally know everyone. And that's why I've been so successful in my career, is because I'm happy to help anyone else with anything they need, and I expect nothing in return. And that is really how I've been able to do everything that I've been able to do, is helping others get what they want. I get what I want as well. It makes me so happy to give to someone that and not expect anything back. That's huge for me. And that's one of the things that I encourage everyone to do, is do something for others that they can't do for you. And it just makes you feel great.
I know some of your mentees, and I talked to a couple of them before the show. You probably don't know that, but that was one thing that strung across the 20 minutes or so conversation that I had with those two guys, was how gracious you are. And I think that that's something that shines through in your personality, and really in all of these brands too, because I can see your thumbprint behind all of them.
Yeah, so you talk to other people about me? That's awesome. That's good.
Oh, yeah. I had to validate.
That's cool.
Yeah. Maybe it's a good time to talk about what we're doing here in the show. Is we're really trying to bring the personal perspective of folks who have envious social media lifestyles, right? And so that's pretty direct, but I'm a pretty direct dude. And that's really what I mean. It's one thing to know somebody and to kind of brush up against them. And I know that you're fortunate enough to brush up against a lot of people. Those that you mentor is one part of it, but there's a whole other part of like customer service and relationship across a market that I've watched you succeed with over years. And, you're indicative of the interviews that we want to put forward on the Convention Not Show. It's important that people get to know a little bit more about those folks that they see, whether Instagram is a platform that they follow. I know we always talk about that one, or whether it be seeing somebody and shaking hands at a trade show, which is kind of like the old school Instagram, if you will, anybody in between. And so, that's a big part of us.
My background's a lot of an employee. Ryan, I take it as a compliment, but I don't really consider myself much of an entrepreneur. I moved to Hawaii, couldn't find a job, so I had to kind of make one. I don't really know that that's being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly what it is.
I hear your story and your intent and the fact that this has been part of your life, your whole life. And you start as a teenager and building fences. And, it sounds like that one was kind of an opportunity you took by the horns, right?
Yeah.
And then, something happens that kind of changes your life, and you spend a great deal of time probably in a bad spot, mentally, physically, for sure. And then you pick yourself back up and get into what I would never want to step into the waters of car sales at all. And then you go from there into like software. What I'm getting at, Gabe, is like the courage with each jump, man. Like, there's plenty of people that are, honestly, I use the word content, and that's probably not the right word, but are satisfied with dissatisfaction, right? Like a shitty job they did for 40 years.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times that what keeps them in that job is, I'm not judging, but the fear of change, right? And the fear of trying something else and maybe not being as good as you were at the last thing, even if you're not that good at it. Stability is nice, right? Change scares a lot of people, but it sounds like you've jumped head first into some very like new edge fields that were very young at the time, and like just gnarly worlds. And I mean, I don't know how do you have any, like, what the hell gave you so much confidence, man?
Ryan, you probably hear me say this over the years, but I just don't have any fear of failure. I'm absolutely okay with people can think this of me, they can think that of me. And, I've fallen flat on my face before, but I always get up and dust off and then go to the next thing.
Do you play sports when you were a kid, Gabe?
I didn't have any time because I was building a fencing company.
So literally like nothing, no like competitive outlet when you were a kid?
Before I was 13, I played baseball and softball, and that was kind of about it. Just because my older sister played softball and she wanted me to play on her team, and I was like, okay, it's fine. But it was all recreational sports. I mean, through the community center, there was nothing competitive. Started in junior high school, the coaches were like, with your size, you can be a D lineman here, or you can be a lineman, and it'd be great to have you on the team. And I just didn't see any interest in getting up at 5:30 in the morning to go to practice before school.
Mornings are bad.
And then, dude, mornings are horrible. And smelling and, and working out and smelling. And and it's just something I wasn't interested in, so I never did it.
A lack of fear of failure, right? Like nobody's born with the fear of failure. We all learn. We all learn that one. Afraid. I asked about sports specifically because I'm afraid that there's plenty of kids by the time they leave high school, they already know they failed because they got told it time and time again by a bunch of coaches they've had, or maybe even worse by their folks. Or there's some pros, but there's a lot of cons of that environment as well. And like, you didn't go through your childhood easy at all, but it sounds like you had your head on straight enough and you weren't worried too much about other opinions, which as a 15-year-old is absurd. I'm sorry, but it shows a lot of fortitude.
Yeah. And what helped me too was, I got high school sweetheart, girlfriend. We're still together to this day.
You and me both, brother.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Hey,
awesome.
You got to get them while they're young.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How old were you when you met Emily, Gabe?
When I met Emily, I was just turning 17.
Okay. So you guys are right around the same age. Mike's been with was it 16 for you, Mike?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't until I had a car, for sure. So I was at least 16 before she gave me the time of day. 16, 17, man, like we just celebrated 21 years we've been together. So.
Yeah. And another thing that to the listeners, we're not married. Emily and I were not married. So we're happy just being together. And I've said so many jokes over the years that she hates. I just don't see, I'm not crazy enough to get the government involved in my relationship. So
you acknowledge appropriately how strong, like that's your backbone, right? Like that's one thing, dude, you check that box when you were like 16 years old. We haven't been wandering through this world making mistakes with women.
Yeah. And the big thing too for me, I look at it as every strong man has a strong woman as well that's even stronger than he is. And every failure that I've been through, she's been there to support me. Every decision I've made, she's been there to support me. Really just being that person I can talk to anytime I want. A lot of people use a therapist for that, but I have my significant other I can use for that. So
that better half.
It was just better half. It's just been a huge benefit to me to always have a solid rock that I can kind of bounce off of. And I'm not perfect. I don't think anyone is. Made mistakes over the years, and she's always been there to help me and rein me back in. And it's great to have that kind of person in your life. And one of the reasons I'm so successful is because of her and pushing me. And, I want to impress her and do things that are fun, and those things take money. And she doesn't need that stuff. She doesn't need that stuff, but it makes me happy to do nice things for people. So I don't know. I think that's one of the reasons I really don't care if I fail, because I know I'm going to bounce back and have a great support system behind me.
I think it's going to be hard to top that as an explanation for the strength and like kind of courage you've had over all these years. Don't get me wrong, you're obviously really good salesman and can close deals. And
and one of the other things too, when I left the organization, I was one removed from the CEO at the organization I was at before. I had a direct line to the CEO. I was making huge bonuses every year, making great regular paycheck every single month. It took about 2 years of planning to plan my exit, because I don't have just myself to take care of. I have Emily and my son Carson as well. I wanted to make sure I set myself up for success. And so this was a very large leap for me to leave an organization after 10 years. But I honestly got comfortable there, super comfortable.
Yeah.
And every quarter, not every quarter, but a few times a year, I had people trying to entice me to come to their organization because they saw a great employee. But it didn't start I didn't start as an employee with Kevin. I started as kind of a partner with him. And what a lot of people don't realize is there's nothing wrong with being an employee. If that's what you want. There's nothing wrong with being an owner if that's what you want. There's nothing wrong with being a bum if that's what you want. But whatever makes you happy is kind of what you want. And what makes me happy is kind of taking risks, calculated ones, and going out on my own. And that's kind of where I'm at now. And it's working out great. Will it be like that forever? No. But I have multiple streams of income now. from the other businesses I'm involved in to kind of fall back on if something were to happen.
So to key in on a couple things there, because I really understand the difference. And Mike, I never knew that you identified as an employee, especially after.
That's just been my experience.
Yeah, I think that you outlined yourself as an employee, an entrepreneur by obligation almost. And I think that ends up true for a lot of people in a lot of ways.
Necessity is the mother of all invention.
It sure is. It sure is. I will say that I certainly understand the struggle to transition in between. And I don't know if you were a Boy Scout or not, Gabe, but the planning part is the hardest thing in my experience. I'm fortunate enough to coach and talk to a lot of startup companies, not only because of where my office is at like Strongbacks West here in Atlanta, but because it's just part of what I do, right? Like I've been working startup for 20 years. And so I come across a lot of people that seek advice. Yeah. One thing is you have to figure out how to abandon the fear to fail. And more times than not, I think that is your support system. It's not money. It seems like it's money in a bank account, and you certainly should have enough to figure out what happens if you don't fail, i.e. you should have a exit strategy. But part of that is that you have to realize that you're going to fail, especially when you get into the entrepreneurial world. The second part that I think to me that was very important is you continually come back to the part about being inspired and being inspired by a team, whether that be a mentor or whether that be the people that you build around you, or whether it just be like your coworkers that you're with, right? Setting up some games that even if you're overlorded or overwatched by a corporate entity, being able to set up some games internally at your local branch or your local segment of the company so that you guys have some fun. That's certainly something that helps drive those sales teams. And I know that's part of what helps you drive your exit through the businesses. So yeah, I got a question from a summary perspective is like, you talk so much about hard work ethic. You started working when you were that age, and, certainly a dad who's a builder, I'm sure that you were swinging a hammer like really, really young. But how does that translate to Carson today? Part of your greatest attribute is certainly that undying effort to work. But how do you instill and impart that on your son? But also, are you imparting it the same way? Do you want him to have as strong of a work ethic, right? Do you feel like there's some happiness that you've given up over the years to have that strong work ethic?
Well, I guess it's kind of hard to say, but I try not to give him everything I didn't have growing up, but to teach him everything I know now that I didn't know growing up. For example, this just happened yesterday with Carson. I picked Carson up with a friend of his from school. And I asked them what they wanted to do, and they said, well, we're hungry. So I said, okay, where you want to go? Of course, what every kid picked, McDonald's. So we go to McDonald's, and we're driving on our way home to the house, and this friend is chewing with his mouth open. And Carson leans over and he says, hey, Jack, you need to chew with your mouth closed because one day you're going to have a girlfriend, and your girlfriend's not going to like that. My dad told me that. And that's just like hidden wisdom. Yeah, that I just was so proud of, which is like a small dad accomplishment. I was so proud he said that, and I was like, man, when we got home and he was long and Jax was gone, I was like, dude, good job saying that. And I knew that resonated with him because one day, guess what? He's going to want to have a girlfriend. He's going to need to chew with his mouth shut, or she's going to leave him. That's what he thinks because that's what I taught him. And I do little things like that all the time. I teach him through experiences. I'll be like, hey, I need some help standing the table out in the wood shop. And I'll get him out there. And he's like, this is hot. I'm sweaty. This is no fun. And I said, well, this is why you need to pay attention when I'm teaching these things, because you need to come up with something when you're older, what you want to do. And right now, he wants to show people reptiles. That's what he wants to do. So, which he has no reptiles yet, but that's his kind of plan. So, I want to give him that mindset of doing his own thing versus following others, if that makes any sense.
I saw a chameleon on your feed.
Oh yeah, so
I think it was at PetSmart though.
It was at PetSmart. So one thing that Emily and I do with him is we take him to pet stores all the time and let him play with animals, and he can hold them and touch them, but we're not taking him home because we got a dog last year, and it is a huge commitment. that he has not learned how to handle yet. So before we get something else, he's going to learn how to handle that commitment that we as a family committed to.
He definitely hit it out of the park with the dog for the first one.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
great. Yeah, Buddy's amazing.
The chameleon. The chameleon might have been easier, but you know, when you get the dog, I think that's the big part of it. So
yeah.
Aside from like just Carson, how do you keep the like business and how do you keep your energy going when you're in those, you know, you indicated 35 weeks in 1 year. How do you keep the happiness at home? And I just mean that at home. I don't mean like specifically your wife or specifically your son or specifically your office, but like when you're on the road that much, how do you keep it going? Because you're not just a big guy in stature, you're a big guy in positive energy. How does that keep rolling?
So what I learned early on from traveling so much was I would make friends at different trade shows, and these trade shows that we're going to, they're called industry trade shows. So there'd be, say, one in Florida, and those people in Florida only go to that trade show. There's one in California. Those people only go to that California trade show. So I'd make friends there, and then I would keep in contact with them. And then I was excited to go see those people because I felt a connected happiness with them. And so I was excited to go to, say, MedTrade because I knew you'd be there, Ryan. Keeping the positive energy going is really faking it until you make it. I learned a long time ago that people really don't care about anything but success, except for your true friends. And if you put on a persona of success, everybody wants to be friends with you. So I created kind of a image while I'm out on the road. And that image was what I was looking forward to when I was traveling.
I like that.
That makes sense. So if I understand you correctly, you really kind of, rather than approaching it from, oh my gosh, I have to worry about what's going on at home, you built these relationships across the country with individuals that, hey, as far as you were concerned, you only got to see them once a year. So you're going to maximize that time and really look forward to that rather than trying to think about, and the age old concept is to act from scarcity, not from abundance, right? And to look back at that scarcity thing that's going on at home or at the office in that way.
Yeah. And I'm really good at leaving problems at one place and go to another. So, you know, if there was something going on at home, I would leave, and then guess what? That problem's there when I got back. I didn't have to deal with them when I'm traveling. And when I'm traveling, Emily has a huge respect for me when I'm traveling because she knows, you know, you get up, you go to breakfast first thing with clients. You're at a trade show standing on our feet all day. Then that gets over at 5. At 6 o'clock, guess where you're going? You're going straight to dinner. Dinner leads to drinks. Drinks lead to a bar. You get home at 1:30 in the morning. And the next day I'll send her a text and say, hey, sorry I didn't reach out. I was busy. And after a while, she sees that's just kind of how it's going to go. And I have a huge respect for Emily that she trusts me enough to do these things. And that's just how it is at a trade show. It's nonstop. So I really kind of leave everything at home when I leave, and it doesn't get restarted until I get back. And I have a great family support system here at my house as well with Emily. We have great friends that are really close to us. My parents and both my sisters live 5 minutes down the road from me. So there's a great support system behind me, or I would have never been able to do these things and expected Emily to put everything on hold for her if I didn't have a great support system in the past. And while I was traveling all that time, Emily was going through nursing school. And we had a kid at home. So it was super busy for both of us. And we made it through it, and now we're doing great. But that's kind of the support system at home is the big kicker here. And a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people don't have it. You moved to Hawaii, like you're just out there, right?
No family. When we moved out here, we didn't know anyone.
Yeah, and if you have a kid, you're going to realize that you don't want that kid being watched by anybody. It's got to be a friend or family, you know, especially in this day and age.
Emily sounds pretty awesome, man. Like, I think you give a really honest description of what those trade shows are like, you know, and I think there's a lot of spouses out there that have a misconception of, well, you're out drinking and schmoozing, and like, don't get me wrong, that shit's fun on the first night. By morning 2, you're regretful, and by morning 3, you just want your own bed again.
Absolutely.
I can do it for like 24 to 48 hours. It is much harder done than said. It really is. It seems glamorous. It seems borderline prestigious. You know, you're going out spending money that isn't yours and doing things that other people don't get to do that often, right? Like, isn't that the goal?
That's the goal. Yeah, that's the goal.
But it ends up being not nearly as cool. You know what I mean? And not like, I don't mean to paint it with just a negative brush, because that's exactly what I'm saying is you still manage to, you've done it in a way that it doesn't screw up your home life. And it also sounds like no matter what, you're that guy bringing that positivity. And like you said, though, sometimes fake it till you make it, right? But if that's the first time that person's going to see you in a year, they don't give a shit if you had 3 bad days already, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. And the big thing too is when you see that person after you haven't seen them for a year, the conversations are always so rich with that person because you really don't keep in contact that much throughout the year. And you might see things on Facebook or Instagram or, you know, it's always nice to catch up with those people. But going back to what you said, you know, doing it 2 or 3 nights in a row, it gets really hard. And then coming home and then the next week you got to do it again. And then next week you got to do it again. What a lot of your clients don't realize, the people at the trade show, they do these 1 or 2 times per year where you're doing it every single week.
yeah.
And I've been down some dark paths in my life because of, I mean, drinking becomes into drinking every single night, going out to 3 or 4 in the morning. And those dark paths are hard to get away from when you come home, you know, because that's kind of the setup that you have. And it's, you know, I got a great friend of mine, Gary Lincoln. He's a musician. He struggled with drinking all his life. I go to meetings with him.
Yeah.
Just to kind of reset a little bit.
That's self-eval, man. Like, it never hurts. And like, it never, I don't think I would never be anyone to say where the line is, but I think we should all look at that line. if we're playing with any kind of substance you're playing around with, you know, be aware of the extremes of it.
Absolutely.
In your world, bro, like, I'm not making excuses, but there's a point where it's fuel, right? Like, to do that,
absolutely,
to do that, all of that completely sober. Man, we had a guy on a couple of weeks ago, and you know, he basically transitioned from being an addict to being an employee to running a company. And the running a company part, I mean, he is the sales guy. He does a lot of handshaking and meeting. I should have talked to him more about how he's still such a good businessman, sober. I hate to say it, but, you know, I've been to more than one meeting in the evening where it kind of took me off guard when someone ordered sparkling water. That's more of a judgment on me, I think. Probably says more about me that I just presumed that we were going to crush a couple beers or have some wine or something, you know, but it's interesting. How have you dealt with that?
I think the big thing is I just know that I just know in my mind that I can swing back a different way if I need to. So it's easy when I get home. This is really what I want, my home life. Going to Little League games, going to school events and having fun, driving my old car around. I got a 54 Bel Air. That's a lot of fun. Doing all those things keeps me in line, and having a partner, of course, keeps me in line. But you know, drinking is just so socially accepted at a trade show. It's all centered around the bar gets here at 6, the show closes at 6. You know, it's like that's what keeps people there. That's what keeps people engaged. And I couldn't even imagine how hard your brother has it doing these things sober. I mean, oh my goodness, that's incredible. That's an accomplishment in its own right.
I think he's one of those great sober guys who's like, no, I want you to have 2 beers because I can't have one. Very much, he's that guy for sure. But yeah, I mean, I just hate to even imagine the alienation. He's at a point of sobriety where he's okay being around alcohol. But I completely understand those that aren't, you know, and imagine like, okay, that's a professional decision. It's a very personal decision, but that's going to affect you professionally. Like, what if you have a sales team and would you want to know if one of your head sales guy was sobering up? I'm being open here. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I would want to know so I could put on my helping hat and help them succeed. Yeah, I'd want to know.
That's an interesting question. That's an interesting question, and your response is very altruistic. But I wonder how many folks would respond the same way from the C-suite. When your director of sales gets going sober for whatever reason, let's assume it's a positive reason, and let's overlook the reality that that's not typically how that happens. Although I've heard about this new term called sober curious. And I wonder how most C-suite executives respond to that. Mike, are you sober curious, buddy?
No, I'm curious about what the hell that phrase means, but I don't want to go down that road, to be honest. I'm really more curious about the question you asked. I mean, Gabe, you've been living this life for 10 years, and I think a lot of people, wrestle with this. So I would like to kind of just chat about this. I always find this part interesting, kind of the darker corners of business and success.
When I say connected path, that's a different meaning to me. So connected path to me is learning about someone else. What can I do to make them happy, and then learning about what they do to be happy. And then the other connected part is, what do they drink? Where do they live? Do they do this? I mean, that I'm figuring everything out about them. But one of the things,
filling out that nameplate.
Yeah.
I miss civilization, but I don't really that much. Pauhana is like happy hour here is the phrase they have for after work. So you get together, Pau means done, like Pauhana means get together, have some drinks. But I'm always trying to think of like ways to expand socially for business reasons, admittedly, but also, for some personal reasons. And you two entrepreneurs, I'll be honest, like it's fear. It's like throwing a party and worrying that no one's going to come to it, So what if I did have and to me, this is really audacious, but my company here is a forensic engineering company. So I work with a lot of insurance people, a lot of legal professionals.
So the first thing I would do is run it by your friends, which you did. We just met. We can be friends. The second thing I would do is find a bourbon that you like. And then I would take it with you out where you go and meet somebody. And then the afternoon, say, hey, man, I got this bourbon. You should really try it. And then they're going to say, yeah, I really like it, just because you're face to face. And then say, I'm thinking about having a party. Would you come? And then they're going to be like, yeah, I'll go. And then you do it on individual one-to-one basis. And then pretty soon you got 25 people saying, yeah, I'll come to your party. And now you got 25 people that are going to come and you can taste bourbon together. And then all of a sudden, these people are hitting you up 30 days later saying, hey, we're going to get together and taste bourbon. You can say, yeah, I'm thinking about starting a club, but it's going to be $25 a month. And you're going to taste 4 different bourbons, and we're going to meet one time a month, and we're going to keep notes on them. About a year later, after you do that, after the fund makes some money, after your bourbon club makes some money, then you say, hey, we're going to do a bourbon tour at a facility here on the island. I don't know if they make bourbon there, maybe make rum or whatever they might make, and go do a tour. And then soon, all of a sudden, you got a little side hustle, and it's not making a lot of money, but you're drinking, you're meeting new people, you're having fun.
Start with the one person.
One person, that's all it takes, just one guy. Yeah.
All right, here in Hawaii. So bourbon, obviously people like bourbon everywhere, but they don't make bourbon here. And I would say, but there's also other types of liquors like Soshu and things that are from like Japan, a little bit more influence. Same thing, just different booze. Because that's what I fear, man, is like, unfortunately, the generic thing sometimes seems safer. People talk about like group lists and things like that. And
yeah,
I don't know. It just seems so informal that it's to a point where people don't feel like it's personal enough. So they're not going to do it.
Hey, I got a question for you guys. Are you guys part of group text at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? I've learned this past year, I was planning a diaper party for a friend of mine, and a diaper party is when your friend's having a baby, you have like a guy's baby shower. Everybody gets together, drinks beer, and brings diapers. Well, I sent out a group chat, and only one person got back to me. So a few weeks later, I individually text people, and everyone got back to me. So it's just kind of funny, like people see it in a group chat and don't see it's very important. So it's funny you say that way.
I'm pretty sure Mike had that same response, right, when you mentioned group chat.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I feel you, man. I do not look at group chats, period. They're almost like voicemails to me.
Yeah.
Don't listen to them. Hey guys, we're a long time into this recording here. I think that this is without a doubt a great way to kick off the season. And Gabe, I think we are both, Mike, I'm going to speak for you before you speak for yourself. I know you love that. But I think that we're both so grateful that you decide to share not just who you are, but kind of like how you do it. And that's a big part of what Convention Not's about. Again, for those of you who are looking to find Gabe, you could search Fat Trunk on Instagram, which is a good one. That's a little bit more of a private kind of pet brand, but also Project, PRODJEX.com. Gabe at projects.com is his email address. If you're looking to get any sort of web consulting done, especially from somebody who's able to handle a project that's big enough to take to market, I think that Gabe's somebody you should talk to. More importantly, I think that we got a chance today to talk about what the difference is between high dollars and big numbers, as well as starting as a real person, taking that first step. Really appreciate you, brother. I know it's not easy to carve time into the schedule.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely to carve it out. Thank you for having me on.
Gabe, thanks so much, man. Honestly, it was such a pleasure. If I took one thing away from this, like we just met, but right away, you exude it. And that likability, you said something earlier about the reality is nowadays people have options. If you want to do business, being good is expected. Being good and likable is really powerful. And Gabe, I don't care what you're doing, man. I'd work with you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Really great talking to you today, Gabe. I appreciate you sharing so much, man.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it as well.